Um, all right, we're going to get started. Hello and welcome to the Fire Tech U. This is our first webinar in a series of webinars, all centered around technology in the fire service. My name is Matt Porteous. I work for the Western Fire Chiefs Association. This project is funded by the Google AI Collaborative Initiative. We started this project in order to bridge a gap that we know exists, and will continue to grow within the fire service if we don't take intelligent action. The gap I'm talking about is having the knowledge and confidence using technology in our day-to-day operations in the most effective manner to streamline and provide efficiency in the fire service. We have witnessed rapid growth in technology, and with that, an increasing amount of data being provided to and collected within the fire service. We know that without the ability to handle and process data efficiently in a simple integrated platform, we will fail to use it. Now let's move on to why you are here. Thank you for joining us. I'm honored to introduce the CEO and co-founder of Tablet Command, Will Pigeon. Thank you.
Matt, thank you so much. Just going through intros real quick, joined by a couple of my colleagues. And Matt, again, thank you very much for Western Fire Chiefs providing us this opportunity to be able to present today. So as you said, Will Pigeon, co-founder and CEO of Tablet Command. My background is 22 years in the fire service, working down in San Diego County, and then getting hired in Contra Costa in 2005, and promoted all the way up to assistant fire chief, and left the fire department in 2020, the end of 2020, to come work full-time for Tablet Command. I'm joined by my colleague, Jake Pelk, and I'll let him do his intro.
Greetings. Thank you, Will. My name is Jake Pelk. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Customer Success. I recently was added to the team in a full-time capacity as a Vice President, but I recently took off the badge after 33 years. My last agency I left with was the Assistant Chief of Sacramento. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks. And I'm going to pass this over to Josh Jansen.
Thanks, Jake. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Josh Jansen. Currently work as a Deputy Chief of Training and Wildland Operations for the Middleton and Star Fire Districts in Idaho. 33 years with CAL FIRE, both structural and wildland side. I worked every rank from firefighter all the way up to a staff chief, a single star position within CAL FIRE. Heavy focus and emphasis on training and safety. And back when I was a new battalion chief about 11 years ago, Jake actually introduced Tablet Command to me, and it became immediately beneficial to me as a battalion chief in the San Bernardino unit of CAL FIRE. So it's kind of been a personal mission for me to utilize and push Tablet Command through CAL FIRE. I dedicated myself to that just to make sure that we were as safe and responsible as we could be throughout the state. So just real happy to see it being pushed through the state now. And that's why I'm here to help assist with that and get this technology out to the people that need it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Josh. So just quickly, background of Tablet Command and the company. Tablet Command is next generation incident management software powered by actionable real-time data delivered in a firefighter-friendly UI. And so we have 3 different channels or products. We've got an iPad application, fully featured. We've got a web portal where you can do management and monitor things, and then also a mobile application for notifications. So in terms of what does Tablet Command do? Tablet Command delivers real-time notifications, sometimes up to 60 seconds faster than traditional station alerting. And also real-time incident management. We started as an incident management application as a standalone app, and since then we've been doing integrations, everything from CAD to staffing solutions. And when you're managing that incident, it's shared with everyone in real time. When you onboard as a Tablet Command customer, it brought on as a customizable standard. So we take your templates, your resources, your standard operating procedures, and we bring those into a standard for your agency. And since doing incident command, we've recognized that there's value in bringing data, and we're going to highlight that a lot today, and into one pane of glass. Just a background of Tablet Command and where the idea came from. Myself and my co-founder worked for Contra Costa County Fire Department, Fire Protection District. And in 2007, we suffered 2 line of duty deaths. A captain and engineer were both attempting to rescue an elderly couple and lost their lives. Inside that, with that department, with any line of duty death or near miss, the department's going to look at what can they do better, going through the reviews, the reports. And there are about 142 recommendations out of that report. And in there, one of them was looking at essentially incident command, accountability, notification, comm center things. Andy came from the Pacific Northwest, from Tacoma Fire, and he just started into Contra Costa. He gave the battalion chiefs, the ops chiefs, a class on accountability and what they did in Tacoma Fire. And at the time he gave the class, it was accountability tags, so clip-on tags. 2 tags are assigned to person, and 1 at the command post, and then once when you go IDLH. This got Andy thinking about incident command. And in 2007, the iPhone came out. In 2009, I believe, the iPad came out. And he was playing Words with Friends with somebody in Texas in real time, and was dragging a letter out to the board and had the idea, the epiphany, why can't this letter represent an engine company with 3 personnel being assigned to fire attack? So we got together and we're working on a project inside the fire department, and we started Tablet Command. So Tablet Command, just a little more background, launched in 2013 as a standalone app. So that's over 12 years ago. We have about 50,000 public safety users and growing, representing about 1,500 agencies, public safety agencies across the United States and Canada. We've seen our users have managed over 220,000 managed incidents, and we're seeing about 33,000 CAD incidents per day that we're seeing. And a managed incident is an incident that's just not coming from CAD. It's actually coming from CAD, but the user or battalion chief, assistant chief, or somebody has managed that incident and using Tablet Command to manage that incident. Tablet Command has about 14,000 shared vehicle locations, and I'll explain what those are in a minute. And we support all risk. So to dive into, to provide context of how Tablet Command can be used or how it's used in the field, we want to provide context, explain that of responding to an incident. So as an incident commander or a company officer or battalion chief responding to an incident, you're going to be looking at many different things, everything from your MDT, which is going to give you your response information, your radio, you're going to be monitoring your radio command or TAC channels. You might be referencing legacy map books, apartment maps. And once you get there, you may start to use a checklist or template or whiteboard to manage that incident. So you're putting all this together and you're trying to process everything. And the IC has a tremendous amount of responsibility. They have to figure out how to get there. If you don't have a driver, you might have to navigate yourself. What are those conditions? Listening to those condition reports, looking at giving a size up yourself, making sure you have resources ordered and they're appropriately assigned, accounting for all personnel, monitoring the resource and situation status of the incident. You're constantly trying to identify hazards, define the strategy, provide updates to the communication center, potentially command staff. You have to keep the incident organized, of course, communicate clearly, and at any time or any moment during the incident, you have to be able to scale. That could be multiple alarms, rapid changing conditions, or potentially a mayday. So as we're putting all this stuff together, you're trying to track all these resources using your checklist, track those resource assignments, personnel, and you're trying to record that either on potentially in your head, if it's a first alarm, as some of us have in the past, legal pad, template, or maybe a whiteboard. So what does a great whiteboard or a template look like? So here's an example of one. This is a real use case. This is for a fire that was managed in Southern California. And this is actually Josh Jansen's fire. Josh is with us on this webinar. And when I first saw this, I was very impressed by this whiteboard. It's very organized. It's recording everything. The penmanship and handwriting is absolutely amazing. And it looks like everything's accounted for. You've got a map, resources assigned, divisions and group. It's one of the most detailed whiteboards that I've ever seen in my career. But I'm going to turn it over to Josh to kind of give a little bit of background about this incident and this whiteboard.
Thanks, Will, and I'm sure you're going to probably share a picture of that. And while I'm flattered for the comment, yes, it does look to the common user, it looks very organized. What it was the entire tailgate turned into a whiteboard. It was an incident that I actually still alarmed came across that incident before the dispatch was out. So I took command of that incident and had the command of the incident for about 30 minutes before the first arriving chief officer in the actual district showed up. So I commanded that until that IC or that battalion chief showed up, took command of the incident, and they put me in as operations. So I stood at my tailgate for about 25 hours at the tailgate running operations on a rapidly expanding incident. That incident turned out 6 days later to be a line of duty death fatality incident. So, as Will mentioned, when that happens, that becomes scrutinized very heavily and looked at through a magnifying glass. So, while I had thought I had done a really great job at tracking and managing everything for that first 24, 25 hours, there were still things that came back when the investigation happened as being that incident commander, and then certainly rolling into the operations section chief for that fire. Even though that was on day one, day two, everything that I had done on a steno pad or on the whiteboards or the whiteboard on the tailgate, everything was really looked at through a magnifying glass and compared to CAD notes and to audio files. And as you can imagine, a year-long investigation, it poked holes in everything I did, just to be bluntly honest. And while I pride myself on being very detailed and believe that I have some experience in managing those, there were a lot of gaps. And not only were there things that I had missed on that whiteboard, I would think most notably was while I did have a tremendous amount of information there at the tailgate, it was unable to be shared amongst anyone. Basically, unless you were able to walk up to my tailgate and look at that tailgate and process it there, nobody had that information, which proved to be a detriment to the incident, to the constituents that were there to protect, and to the firefighters that were there. There was a wealth of information, as Will mentioned, but it was not being shared to everybody on the incident. So I appreciate your comments, Will. I know there's a better way to do it, and again, that's why I'm here is just to highlight those inefficiencies with the way we've been doing it for a very long time and with the way we can do it moving into the future. So thanks, Will.
Definitely. Thanks, Josh. So, when we're using templates or checklists or whiteboards, you've got your limitations, and where we have areas for improvement are handwriting and penmanship. I think Josh has some of the best penmanship I've ever seen on an incident command board. He should have been a school teacher, the way that he can write on a whiteboard here. But you're subject to human errors, distraction, handwriting, transposition errors. This whiteboard has a tremendous amount of information on it, but it's not scalable. That was 26 hours that Josh was managing that incident at the back of his tailboard, and you can see that it's full. So he's either going to have to erase that, take pictures to document it, but it's not scalable. Josh shared that during that incident, multiple times, firefighters, chiefs, company officers would come up and put bottles of water on the tailboard, and immediately it's smearing the back of the tailboard. And then, Josh, could you also talk about one of the experiences you've had in your career with being at the command post and having paper and being subject to wind?
Yeah, Santa Ana wind-driven fire in the Jurupa Valley Battalion there in the Riverside area, so Southern California. Had a lot of, probably about 4 hours into the incident, had a lot of good paperwork done and documented, and physically lost those worksheets and steno pads in a 60-mile-an-hour gust of wind that came up at the tailgate. It really destroyed everything that we had on the back of the tailgate as well, with everything from dust and debris to weeds and tumbleweeds and everything that flew up into that tailgate. So I have physically lost those worksheets in the wind. So another really good, valid point, Will. Thanks.
Absolutely. And just to hit some of these, it's not standardized. It's not shared, as Josh illustrated, with anyone else other than those that standing in the back of the command board or the tailboard. And it's not updating itself. So as units are assigned, it's not automatically populating those resources. There's no history. Josh took photos of this, but it requires that to be diligent and do that. And the user interface is poor, even though Josh, as I shared, did, I think, an amazing job. So as we're putting all this stuff together, you're under a tremendous amount of pressure and stress, and you're trying to accomplish those benchmarks, those checklists, making sure that you have personnel all accounted for, resource assignments, and trying to communicate everything to everyone clearly while you're managing the incident. So Tablet Command provides an ability to simply just drag and drop resources. So as they're assigned by CAD, it's just a simple drag and drop to give them an assignment to what your standard operating procedures or what your incident would be looking like based off that call type. So just to give a background of why we built the application on an iPad and how we kind of took it from there. So back in 2011, we started with cocktail napkins, worked with a user experience person. Andy and I went back and forth on how it looked. But we were looking at different pieces of hardware. We were looking at Panasonic tablets. We were looking at, I don't know if Android was at the time, but we were looking at other things and trying to figure out what we wanted to install and build the application on. We chose iOS because it was the most responsive. The iPad was the most responsive at the time in 2011, and that maintains true today. It is by far the most performant tablet that we've experienced as a company in terms of the UI, security, stability, also cost as well. And again, we built the application specifically to focus on a simple user interface, and we're going to cover that. You can have a lot of data and a lot of complex things happening, but we really try to keep it simple. Just to give you an example, in terms of firefighter tracking, that's a huge topic these days in the fire service, and the technologies there, for example, on P25 radios or wildland radios or those pucks or whatever you might have, Garmin's. But in terms of seeing that data, that's information overload. If you put all the firefighters' locations, for example, on a structure fire or a wildland fire, it becomes essentially unusable and clutters the scene. So when we're thinking about bringing firefighter location into our application, we're really trying to hone that down and worry about the UI. Let's see, we have 12 years supporting over 200 plus comm centers, 1,000 fire departments, significant influx of feature requests over the years. And again, we take those in and we want to ask some questions like, does this actually help or does it complicate the process? I'm going to pause for a second and just turn it over to Jake in terms of some of his inputs in terms of feature requests and making technology better and bringing it into the fire service.
Thank you, Will. So I think we all, those of us in the fire service spend any time in it are well aware of the idea fairies that come through. And I didn't really understand it until I promoted of what that really meant, but there's a lot of great ideas that come from the fire service. Some will land and some won't, but I think one of the things that I kind of landed on in my last role as the chief that oversaw technology for the city of Sacramento was, is it 4x better than the analog solution? And what I mean by that is what we're doing with the problem and using technology to bridge that gap. Does it bring us four times the return as it could with a simple solution? And if it didn't, then I would opt to say, no, let's stay with analog. And I think really where this comes into play with Tablet Command is that it's about bringing everything under that same pane of glass. And I think that, there's a challenge now as we're getting so much data thrown at us. Like, how do we discern that, keep it clean, and then keep to the task at hand? And I think that's really where our sweet spot is with our UI and what we're doing with Tablet Command. I saw this both as one of the first customers in San Mateo County, and then eventually through my career where I ended.
Awesome, Jake. Yeah, I want to highlight on some things. We've gotten feature requests or the fairies, the idea fairies, as Jake so eloquently spoke of. But we've also had requests from actual customers or from large metros that say, hey, we'll come to Tablet Command if you modify your UI to support our template. That was a difficult decision that we made a long time ago, about 5 years ago, when we had a very large metro come to us and ask us that exact question: change your application to support our operations. And we decided to say no. And the reason we did that is we wanted to keep it in a standard. And what that's done for us today is now you have so many agencies using Tablet Command. Anyone can walk up, any battalion chief that's ever experienced Tablet Command can walk up to any command post or look at any incident that's shared into their account, and it's a standard. It looks the same. So it all looks the same. You're not having to search and spend time looking where resources are assigned and where the checklist is, et cetera. Another example of that is we responded to a large metro for an RFP, and they wanted an acknowledge button in the application. They wanted 3 of them, actually. We ended up responding back to the RFP and saying, no, we're not going to do that. And we're going to give you one better, and we're going to allow it to basically the dispatcher to make any text in the CAD for any of our customers an acknowledgement feature. And we'll touch on that in a little bit. I'm going to jump into a success story of Tablet Command is the Sacramento City Fire Department. I'm going to turn it over to Jake to talk us through their story.
Thanks, Will. So when it says Sacramento City Fire Department, that's one agency within the county of Sacramento. There are multiple agencies in Sacramento, and I think they're all highlighted here through a couple of slides that I had put together. I went to Sacramento approximately 3 years ago. And prior to going there, I had actually worked with the Sacramento Fire Department, bringing it into the county. And Chief Taylor, the operations chief there, just decided that, ultimately he was not going to have another near miss, swing by without change to operations. And so what was key to the implementation in Sacramento was that accountability system, that we wanted to know the who, why, what, when, and where before we go into the IDLH, which is mandated by ICS, 910 for our fire scope in California. So that was a real key factor for Sacramento to come on board. But there are so many other benefits that we learned with our response partners in the county, with Sac Metro and with Casumnas and with Folsom and our other agencies within the county, that really started to change the way we operated. And I think there's a couple, if you click to the next slide, I can kind of talk about that a little bit. So one of those implementations that was, very organic in the way that it came about was the use of FireMapper. FireMapper is a third-party integration that Tablet Command does, which gives you the ability to annotate on the map and actually add pictures to the map. And this became a huge piece for us. And I think one of the things that was surprising to me about Sacramento and the region is, number one is, I'd heard stories about it, but they are very, very busy. They get a working incident in the city, about every 13 hours. And because of that amount of working fires, they've done some things, even though they're 150-year-old fire departments that, are just part of their evolution. Another thing that happened was on this particular case was they have a cooperative agreement with Sac Metro for use of their aircraft for their helicopter. And if you can click to the next slide, you'll see that those little photo icons that are actually showing up on this incident are going to be represented now on the map. Now that map brings that picture from its bearing and location and drives that back to and puts it right on the map in Tablet Command. And what this does for an incident commander is it gives them real-time situational awareness and that transference of information. And Josh talked about a little bit. It's like all that information he had on his board wasn't shareable. And I think that's one of the gaps when you look at that 4X and what are you trying to achieve by bringing technology into command? You're trying to get a bunch of stuff that is much better than you could do in conventional means. Today, you could just say, I got a radio and a steno pad. Tomorrow, this is an option for you. And in this particular scenario, we had dispatched for us, it was early in June, we had multiple grass fires burning in the region at the same time. The IC actually ordered a structure protection assignment to those structures that you see in the top left corner picture, and was unable to see because of the smoke occlusion, that water feature that was in between the map and or the left flank of the fire and the structures. And the helicopter actually came up on the air and said, Chief, you got your tablet command on? He's like, yeah. He's like, look at the picture I just sent you. And he looked at the drop picture and he said, copy that, cancel the structure protection assignment, return those to service, as we had many other incidents burning in the county at the same time. And it's that kind of real-time decision making that is key to bringing technology in your command process. And I think it's really important. If you can take me to the next slide there, Will.
Yeah, Jake, before we do that, I want to highlight one thing. Technology, the
Okay.
helicopter may have been, without tablet command, may have been able to relay it and take those screenshots or those photos from the iPhone and maybe share those via text message. But to have those images show up in the centralized command platform that everyone is on the same page and they go to that same just by a tap, as opposed to texting everybody on the incident, it just saves tremendous amount of time. So.
Yeah, I think one more piece on that, if you go back to that for a second, is Sac City doesn't have a helicopter. This was actually Sac Metro's airship, and Sac Metro, their crew chief did this, just figuring out the technology. I think what's important to talk about as well is the simplicity of the technology. And they thought about how they wanted to apply it and then transfer information down to the IC. We'd never trained this. We'd never talked about this. We never even brought this up as an option. This was just a heads up crew chief who decided to say, hey, I'm going to give you the heel, the left flank, the right flank, and the head on every single image. And it was funny because I called him later and I go, hey, that was awesome. He goes, hey, I'm sorry, did you not want me to put photos on city map? I go, no. I go, I want them on every map. I go, this was a great use of technology. So just to highlight, some cooperation you get from your neighbors as well through bringing them all together on the same pane of glass. Here's another case study that I'd like to talk about. This is not a happy story. This was a tragedy in our region. And it just was another piece that I was so grateful at the time to Tablet Command for helping us with. And we lost an engineer in a training incident back in September of 2024. Through the use of a tool they call incident sharing, we took the incident information from our neighboring county, our neighboring dispatch center, and started piping their calls into SAC Regional's incident. And then we're instantly able to cover their stations even before notifications were made on what was actually going on. So just another example of, again, thinking outside the box, making technology help, fulfill that challenge that we have, where there's always something that's going to come up. And I think one of the things that we strive for, coming from the inside out, coming from the inside, being firefighters, recognizing those challenges, feeling those pain points, is if you have questions and you're a customer of ours, reach out to us and say, hey, can we help? We've helped at many funerals where we've given out licenses to say, hey, if you're having incoming units cover your jurisdiction, let us help. That's a passion project for me and our team. Anything that we can do to make those pain points get less, please feel free to reach out to us for that.
Thanks, Jake. I'm going to start going through these slides a little bit quickly. So in terms of integration, Tablet Command supports various integrations. And the reason I want to cover this is to showcase when you're looking at technology solutions, you want to make sure that they seamlessly or as close to seamlessly integrate with the solutions that you currently have. So as an example, Tablet Command integrates with CAD. So we're getting real-time CAD data, vehicle location data. We can take that from cradle points, from CR wireless modems, from CAD, from satellite, from fleet tracking. We can grab all that stuff. We also integrate with staffing solutions like Telestaff and Vector Solutions. Customized mapping. So we support taking mapping from ArcGIS Online, and anything that your GIS or your fire operations team wants to put into the map will show up in Tablet Command. And that includes working with providers like Firefront or FireMapper, Genesis. And then one of the other things is that we do is an integration handoff to open up an application. So we can do turn-by-turn directions and we hand off to applications that your users are probably already familiar with, which includes Waze, Apple Maps, and Google. And we're going to hand off inside the application in iOS the latitude and longitude, so there's no mess up in terms of trying to look up that address. We're taking that geolocated address, lat and long, coming from CAD, and putting that right into those applications. Western Fire Chiefs wanted me to cover some details in terms of the technology, in terms of how things integrate in terms together, as this is an educational series. So, CAD solutions have been siloed, and we pay expensive money as assistant chiefs or fire chiefs to get those integrations to CAD when we need those. So as time's passed, there's different options for integration, and I'm sure some of you that have worked with different vendors have talked through some of these things. So I'm going to cover these items in detail. So we've heard about different CAD integrations. We've heard about email, file export, database query, and API. Tablet Command can do all those, but I'm going to talk in detail what that actually means. So when you do an email integration in the CAD, it's very easy for the communication center or a senior dispatcher or supervisor to be able to turn that email notification on to either you as a chief or company officer, or maybe another vendor to do that. The problem with the email is it's very kind of low hanging fruit. It's easy to implement, but the problem is that it has very, very limited data. So it's not going to continually update. It's going to send out that initial notification, or maybe you could get a notification when additional units are added, but it's going to be really kind of limited. And so there's some integrations that support that today, and the data isn't constantly updating. A file export, so that anybody that's worked with your RMS vendor or PCR vendor, you've heard about a file export coming from CAD. What that means is the CAD is basically going to drop a file into a mutually decided folder on a server somewhere, or maybe it's an FTP server up in the cloud or with the vendor. They're going to drop that file in every so often when the incident is updating. And then the vendor is going to be watching for that update. And as soon as that file hits, they're going to process it and update whatever record that might be. So that might be an incident reporting solution that you might be, such as ESO or image trend, or it might be a PCR application. The problem with the file export, and again, this is kind of somewhat easy to do. It does sometimes take cost and CAD vendors to implement this. It's limited data. So the CAD vendor is going to have a preset template of what data is going to be coming out. And it also might be delayed, meaning that the file export may not hit until another unit is added. So you're not going to get that constant update in terms of what the CAD comments are, or maybe the address, the location has changed, and the file's not going to update and export again until another unit's added. So that's something to watch out for with the file export. In terms of the database query, all CADs almost all CADs utilize a relational database such as SQL Server, and those databases are typically replicated. So you'll hear the term replicated database or reporting server, and that's what Tablet Command can do. Tablet Command can also interface, just like a lot of vendors, into that database and working with the CAD administrator, the communication center, the IT department, and also the vendor to figure out what data is available. So we can query that, do read only. The problem with this, though, is you're essentially just going to be pinging that like every 10 seconds, seeing, hey, are there any new incidents? Have any other units or comments been added? So it's a little bit limited as well. Now, the best CAD integrations that Tablet Command has experienced, and I think a lot of vendors that are dealing with the real time, is the API. So some CAD vendors have a real-time API integration. And what does API mean? API is Application Programming Interface. So this is essentially an interface in CAD. It's a computer interface, and it's like a channel or something that another piece of software can talk to CAD or listen to CAD in real time on. Some CAD vendors have very rich APIs. Some are in real time, some are delayed, some have limited data. It just depends on the vendor. So what you want to do is get the richest and real time, the best API. So that should be a question that you're asking if you're going out to an RFP for a CAD vendor, is how does data come out of your CAD? How do vendors interface with your CAD? And it's, when you do an RFP, they're going to have a set list when you go to RFP of different integrations you're going to be integrating with. maybe it's tablet command, maybe it's, ESO or image trend. But how easy is it going to be to integrate the next solution tomorrow when you come and you want to integrate with CAD? And that's a question that you should be asking. Okay, so now in terms of tablet command, and we're getting a little bit into the technical weeds here. So tablet command would have an interface application that would sit in the local CAD network, and it's going to talk to a CAD potentially with an API, or it's going to do that database query. And tablet command is going to have a piece of software that's going to be sitting on a local network, which is typically going to be hosted by the IT department. So they'll stand up a virtual machine, like a Windows server that lives in a virtual environment, and a vendor like tablet command would install their software on there and be able to have access on that local network and be able to watch for data changes and then send that out as we do to our API up in the Amazon Web Services cloud. And it's all encrypted and all both in transit and at rest. And so what we do once that data hits the cloud, then we're sending out those notifications immediately to with Apple push notifications. That's why you're getting notifications so fast on your phones and on your iPads. And then all the iPads are checking in and getting those updates as well. So the reason that it's so important that tablet command gets the data as quickly as possible, and it's is that you're making real-time command decisions based off this data. So units are being assigned or swapped out, conditions are changing, structure fire might be moving across the street because it was initially reported somewhere. And I want to put a perspective on sometimes, going back to the different integrations, sometimes it's okay for that data to be delayed. For example, incident reporting server or an EMS report, the paramedics, just like me, probably aren't going to do their EMS reports until the end of the shift anyway. So if you wait 5 minutes before updating that PCR, it's not the end of the world. But when you're providing real-time notifications and you're providing real-time command decisions, it's paramount that you get that data as quickly as possible. And again, it's based off each perspective, or what are you trying to integrate with? So an email may be okay. It might just be a notification. So I just wanted to highlight those differences. So as tablet command was born and started as a standalone application, we had from customers the request to be able to status back into CAD. And we can only do this with those real-time API integrations with the CAD. So I want to highlight again, so you're able to status and push data back in that bidirectional API interface. So it's able to accept that data. Here's an example. I mentioned this earlier of us hearing a request regarding an acknowledgement button and being able to modify that and change that for that RFP. This is that example. So a dispatcher can basically wrap anything in comment in star, star, star. What that's going to do, it's going to prompt all the users that are responding, all the units that are responding with an acknowledgement. And not only does it support one acknowledgement button push, you could push multiple acknowledgements for different things at different times. So if you had, for example, wires down, which is a safety issue, or a person trapped, you can provide those as separate acknowledgements. And it works with any CAD that we have that two-way API bidirectional communication with. Here's an example of an integration. Jake was highlighting this with the SAC regional solution that we were SAC City and SAC Metro with FireMapper. So we integrate with a provider, FireMapper, and we're able to, FireMapper allows multiple users simultaneously to update and collaborate in a map in real time. And so tablet command takes whatever's updated by all those users in the FireMapper platform and bring that all into one pane of glass. So everyone's looking at that same thing. So you're not trying to find a text message or share in some other way. Western Fire Chiefs also wanted us to cover kind of the detail in terms of the different integrations that we have with different companies. So when you're looking at technology solutions, you kind of know the verbiage and what you're looking for. So with FireMapper integration, this is one of the deeper integrations that we have. It's a very close partner of ours. So we're doing an API integration. So things are going back and forth between tablet command and FireMapper just to make things are synced in terms of like incident data and those type of things. Once the user decides to use FireMapper, you can see them clicking a little icon in the upper right-hand corner of a map for the incident. That's going to call an application locally on the device and pass over some credentials that were exchanged on that API to say, hey, open up a specific FireMapper incident for this specific incident. So that multiple users are tapping that same UI. It's opening up a local application in iOS. but it's sending over some data so that everything's synced together for this specific incident. And then once those changes are made inside of FireMapper service is hosted in the US as well. There's a mapping service that we're going back to the clients that basically puts that mapping service of what that map looks like, that incident map from FireMapper looks like as multiple users. So you're basically having almost crowdsourced in terms of all the users being able to collaborate, and it's all kind of distilling down into your one pane of glass, that incident. Here's another example of another integration partner that we have, which is Genesis. Genesis, which is probably known pretty well on the West Coast, or Zonehaven, formerly Zonehaven. They provide the ability for counties to be able to support preset polygons for evacuation zones. So we showcase those evacuation zones in Tablet Command. And when we first built this, we did it per customer or per county. For example, my agency, Contra Costa County, they could see all their zones and the status of their zones. So as they updated them in Genesis Protect or Zonehaven, those zones would change. And you can see here in TC Mobile, you can see the zones that are changing, that are on order or on warning. Now, when we first did this, we recognized that the value, of course, is to Contra Costa County Fire and whoever is utilizing the Genesis as a solution. They could see when they make those evacuation orders, when that actually has happened, when OES has actually pushed those out. So the incident commander, the units responding can see what's on evacuation or what's on order. We realized, though, that it would be more valuable to bring the status of all evacuation zones, of the Genesis evacuation zones, available to all customers. So, for example, if you're a unit responding from Contra Costa or Sacramento, and you're responding to San Diego, and they have their evacuation zones activated, you're able to see those in Tablet Command today, straight out of the box. As soon as you come on as a customer, you just turn it on and you're able to see those zones. There's no configuration, no back and forth or anything like that. It's all set up, ready to go. Now imagine being a user responding, for example, to San Diego County, or more recently in January to the LA fires. You can see the status of those zones, so you know what's on order and what's on warning. But also, if you're a division, a branch, or maybe you're the ops section chief, and you say, oh my gosh, they haven't evacuated this zone, and I know that the fire is moving this way, but no one's actually called for it. You can call up your chain of command or to your IC and say, I want to evacuate this zone number. You're on the same page as OES, the sheriff, law enforcement, and all the fire agencies that are responding to your incident of what that zone is. So there's no communication of ordinal directions in terms of north of street or east of this river. Just to highlight, that also is a mapping service. So we're working with Genesis. We have essentially a separate feature service or a map service that's coming to Tablet Command that we push to all of our customers. So as those are updated, that's how the integration works. Customized maps, everything in Tablet Command in terms of the maps are customizable. So we integrate with ArcGIS Online. And this is important from a technology perspective. You want to choose a solution that uses your current technology. ArcGIS Online, or Esri, which you've probably heard, or ESRI, is probably utilized by over 97% of government agencies in North America. So anything that you can put in Esri and ArcGIS Online is updated in Tablet Command for all your users. Here's another example of an integration of pre-plans. So you might have those apartment maps or those pre-plan maps that might be in a PDF or an image form. With Tablet Command, you can tap on the map, get those pre-plans, and load those either locally from your device or potentially from a file server or from files for another application on the device. Here's an example of custom buttons. So there's a lot of custom buttons here, but out of the box, I think it's, with Tablet Command and any other vendor, you should look at, the application has configuration and, setup and with CAD, et cetera. But there's things that, we can't account for as a vendor that you're going to be integrating to today or maybe tomorrow. So what we did is we built custom buttons so that the agency or the customer can design what those buttons are. So you could pull up drone footage, for example. You could open up another like EV rescue application locally on the device. So we provide those buttons to be configured by the customer so that they can, do whatever they need to do, because every agency is different. They have different solutions. But here's an example of kind of bringing that into a single pane of glass. This is a drone video of a 5-alarm fire in San Mateo County. And this is actual drone video, but you can see that we bring that drone video in and you can keep that video up inside your application and continue to manage that incident. Here's another example.
How far out are you sitting now? We're 700 feet from the Dumbarton, but we went out to 1.5 miles, our first search pattern, and then we headed back to 1 mile.
So that was an example of a drone doing a search pattern for a jumper off a bridge in the San Francisco Bay. This is another example of the alert wildfire cameras, which we've heard of. You can tap and put those on the map. It's fully customizable by your agency. You just tap on that and you get that size up. And here's an example, and I'm going to turn it over to Jake.
Yeah, I just think this is another point that highlights to that map. It's not just about, looking at your specific data, but putting it in context on the incident. And I think that the value add here and that 4x multiplier is, taking, the AVL with the MODIS data, the fire perimeter, and then putting the cameras on top of it that really kind of complete that picture and assist you in decision making, which is critical, when time is a commodity for the incident commander, or even for a strike team leader, a division, or even a company level. Just looking at this and saying, I now have more information just at the palm of my hands that can tell me either what I'm going into or help me make sense of what I'm seeing.
Awesome. Yeah, Jake, I think it's also important to highlight the difference between, bringing that data like into that one screen and potentially going to look for another application. Or can you imagine going to the alert wildfire cameras network on a web portal, for example? It makes a huge difference.
It does, and I think that really it's about giving that context. And this next slide also just kind of highlights, as we're starting to get full motion video in the West, from CAL FIRE's Intel ship and from the FIRES project, we're still now starting to see, real actionable things like ember casts that are getting into beds that are starting to produce. So, a guy like Josh who's sitting in the ops section, can all of a sudden look and go, now I'm getting real intel, and now let me understand where they are on the fire, where resources needs might be made, and then, try to get ahead of that curve so that we can get people to the right place at the right time.
Yeah, Jake, that's why I'm sitting in this yellow shirt right now. I'm operations section chief on a fire up in the Klamath, and I have not put this iPad down since we took command of this incident several days ago. So I can tell you it is the platform I'm using to make those decisions every single day right now, currently, as I'm sitting out here on the line. So.
And I think it's with this image, I think it's a great image because it shows so many different things. But we've got the call comments, the incident location on the map. We have all the shared vehicle locations from other agencies outside your communication center. You've got aircraft location with our ADSB integration. You've got a fire model provided by CAL FIRE via TechnoSilva on the map as well, and live aircraft video feed all in one pane of glass. Now, if you were trying to get all that information in different solutions today, it'd probably take you 10 minutes to look through all those different things. So bringing all that information into one pane of glass to truly make a difference is what we have here. I'm going to jump into kind of benefits and compliance relative to Tablet Command. So we're all aware of the NIOSH 5. So we got improper risk assessment, lack of incident command, lack of accountability, inadequate communications, lack of SOPs to failure to follow established SOPs. These are the things that are typically lacking when we have these line of duty deaths or near miss situations. Also, we have against us as a fire chief or as an organization, you're looking at NFPA 1561, NFPA 1500, and in California, we've got ICS 910, not just resource accountability, but actually who's on what resource. Jake, any comments?
No, I think this is just one of the essential pieces that I think we all have to question in ourselves. Like, what is it really that we do in command? And then to me, it was like, get your resources ordered, manage the ones that you have, make sure they're fed, and get them home. And to do that, that sounds simple, but it's not. tracking all of that in the continuum of an incident that is dynamic is a challenge. And it's really been one of the things that I think I hammer down the most when I get a chance to talk about what I believe is my best contribution to the fire service is working with Tablet Command to make it relevant, like with Josh and the other people that we have that come from within the fire service through Tablet Command and through the genius of a simple UI to bring that all home in one pane of glass, as you said.
Yeah. And I've started to talk about this with the NIOSH 5. I almost feel like with early notification, the situational awareness, improved accountability, improved communications, checklists, standard operating procedures right in front of you with Tablet Command, we're almost repelling with all this information of giving everything from notifications to firefighters in the stations, of seeing their call comments, to giving it to them in the back seat. It allows them to have improved assessment of what they're going to. Using a command tool improves incident command. You have staffing integrations showing of who's on what resource from an accountability standpoint. And we, improve communication. You can actually see the incident command board that people are using to manage the incident while you're responding at 3 a.m. to a third alarm. You can see how that command board's being run. And with the checklist and Tablet Command, you have the standard operating procedures. I almost feel like this is repelling, all this information is repelling the NIOSH 5, is my claim. So Tablet Command delivers advanced notifications and improved response, command decisions, situational awareness. You've got a better adherence to standard operating procedures and checklists, improved accountability. You have after action reviews, record every single action that you're taking in that in the application. You're able to make faster decisions with quicker accesses to data, improved integration with all the solutions that you are using. It's fire-friendly UI, and we have some of the best customer support in the industry. Here's a quick example of a checklist talking about those standard operating procedures and guidelines. Those would be yours to be able to pull up during an incident. So you have that free moment. You can remember what you may have overlooked. Activity report, recording every single thing inside the application that you're doing. So let's put it together. So we're almost running out of time here, but I want to showcase when I was responding as a company officer, a brand new company officer in 2013, I was going to a adjacent county immediate need strike team request. And I had very limited information as a new company officer sitting in the front seat. I had a 45-minute drive time. All I got was units assigned to my strike team, what radio channel we're supposed to be from a TAC perspective, and the IC's name and location. That's it. So I didn't know what was going on, where the fire was, couldn't see the smoke. We were long way out. And with Tablet Command today, a company officer can be inside looking at their iPad and start to see shared vehicle locations, start to paint the fire, be able to see that MODIS data, that mapping data, be able to see their resource locations inside their communication center. So it really changes the game for anyone responding. In terms of another feature that we launched is incident sharing. So if you're at an adjacent communication center going to a mutual aid or automatic aid incident, today, the way it works is those resources, if you have an additional request for resources, that comm center is going to call on that neighboring comm center. And that process takes 3 minutes. It's nothing against the dispatchers, nothing against the comm center. It's just picking up the phone, relaying the information, takes 3 minutes. They're going to then assign a resource. But while they're responding, they don't get updates. They get essentially maybe one comment. They may not be able to listen to the radio traffic because they might be outside of the LMR reception. But with incident sharing with Tablet Command, as soon as that incident is triggered by a unit or a call type, it's immediately shared with that other Tablet Command customer or that adjacent communication center, giving you advanced notification, situational awareness. And you still have to make that phone call to assign those resources. But what it gives the crews that are responding or the chief officers that are monitoring the situation of what's going on while they're responding. So they can see those updates as they're responding. In terms of collaboration, Tablet Command also works on a map view. So you can drag resources out to the map and you can see how those resources are assigned. We take in-app audio from your command tactical traffic, dispatch traffic, both for your communication center, or if you have neighboring communication centers audio streams, you can bring those into Tablet Command. In terms of AVL, we talked about this. We also have shared vehicle location. So shared vehicle location is Tablet Command customers sharing their vehicle locations from their communication center into the Tablet Command ecosystem. So if you're a Tablet Command customer, you will be able to see those locations of those other resources, which is a game changer. So here's an example of Los Angeles County. I think Los Angeles County has, looking to Jake, I think it's 13 different communication centers throughout the county. And here you can see almost all of them coming on. And I'm going to turn it over to Jake to talk about the next slide.
At an interest of time, I think that you guys wanted to do a little Q&A for us. So I just wanted to highlight once again, just another opportunity that we use this during the Palisades and Eaton fires, both on, the federal response from FEMA side that I went on, and obviously on the vegetation side as well. So I don't know where we're at with time, Will, but I know they wanted to do, I think, a little Q&A.
Definitely. We've got about 4 minutes left for a Q&A session. So if you have any questions, let's go get those queued up. Additionally, Western Fire Chiefs wanted us to share some reference customers. And so we've got Orange County Fire Authority, San Bernardino County, and Los Angeles County up here. So if you want to reach out to them, feel free, and maybe just take a screenshot. And then this will be available, is my understanding, as well by Western Fire Chiefs.
Thank you, Will. Yes, it will be available on the Western Fire Chiefs website. If you need to follow up, if anybody needs to follow up on any information they received here, or if they want to share this with anybody in their fire service family. Will, we do have one question on here right now. Does TC work when there's no data connectivity?
Yeah, it's a great question. That's one we get quite frequently. So Tablet Command was born as a standalone application. So from the incident command standpoint, with the data that you have on your device at that time when you're managing the incident, yes, it'll continue to work. However, we're not magicians. So if you've lost your Verizon or your cellular coverage or your CAD has gone down, you're not going to continue to get updates in terms of CAD comments that are coming to the iPad or to the device, or units that are assigned. So it does depend upon connectivity for those updates, or if you're managing an incident, for it to be shared in real time with other iPads. But it does, just to highlight again, it does function and allows you to still drag and drop and use it as a standalone application when it's lost connectivity. And I think that's something that's important from a technology perspective as well, is that was one of the first things that we looked at when we were building the application. We know how the fire service is. We know that comm centers go down with their comms. And so that's why we built it that way. Good question.
Will, one follow-up question. What does the refresh look like once they come back into connectivity?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the iPad that's managing the incident is going to still manage the incident. So there's no refresh other than those CAD comments are going to update inside the incident, and any additional units that were assigned by CAD would automatically populate. For other iPads in the field, it immediately, as they regain connectivity, they would immediately start syncing with that original iPad. Great question.
Great, thank you, Will. Here's another question. Follow-up request, please. Questions regarding integration and uses by energy companies, medic response, etc. So partner agencies that might be responding with fire resources.
Yeah, great question. I'm going to leave that one for Jake, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so we're doing some proof of concept work right now with large utility in Northern California. Basically looking at just that, like, how do we streamline and make more efficient response? And then how do we, for the fire service, get the best bang for the buck, right? So if you have a utility partner that you count on to help mitigate, situations, and you're going to share your data with them, what are you getting back from them? So there's a great collaboration working on NorCal. Further following, we are establishing a full vertical around the utility market, because we see a lot of value in both the collaboration and a lot of the similarities in utilities to the fire service. And so there'll be a lot more coming in months to come.
Great, thank you, Jake. Another question. Can the mobile app be set to viewer only so members can maintain situational awareness without accidentally altering the incident's tablet command ecosystem?
Yeah, it's a great question. So TC Mobile, which is the phone application, is completely viewer only, with only some ability to add like comments and some little things inside the application. If you're managing the incident in the iPad, there's only one iPad that can manage the incident. So everyone else is essentially a viewer. And you can transfer command or transfer the control from one iPad to another. So essentially everyone's viewers for the most part, and you can, it does restrict you. And you can also put a hard restriction on that user to never be able to manage a request to manage that incident. So maybe you want to do that for a prevention person, or maybe potentially an EMS unit. You never want them to manage an incident. You can lock that down. So great question.
Great, thank you, Will. We have no other open questions right now, unless anybody wants to drop one into the Q&A right now. If there are no other questions, please, everybody attending, feel free to reach out to Tablet Command or Western Fire Chiefs Fire Tech U for additional information or resources regarding what we've talked about today. Thank you.